new UK Bribery Act indicates, corruption that deals with both private sector and public sector corrupt officials and executive officers. So the techniques, for example, used by a corrupt Chinese or Malaysian politician will differ quite significantly from those of a Nigerian or Ghanaian, to pick two nationalities out of many. The money that reaches the UK from these jurisdictions will be using techniques familiar to all of us, namely money laundering, deception, fraud, whatever, but they will be working across the board in all the range of techniques to hide and disguise corrupt monies. And of course, corruption is an offence, predicate of offence for subsequent money laundering prosecution. But at the same time as corruption works in wondrous ways, if you'll excuse that, it's also alarmingly difficult to get a handle on. Now, the key issue in a corruption investigation is simply getting alerted to the crime. When two adults consent to something, unless one happens to be a whistleblower who's going to tell the authorities, it often remains in obscurity. The fact is, often, and it may happen, that no one loses out from corruption. At least no one knows they're losing out from corruption, or they're not losing out from corruption for a very long time. And then they suddenly discover that their road system is prematurely collapsing, or indeed that the materials were shoddy. They may find that their politicians who were corrupt had bought a military apparatus, as indeed I believe happened in Tanzania, or that their politician, way down the line, turns out to be the front man for organised crime. The number of cases where corruption is possible, even obvious, but not provable, is truly scary. Now, it's also disastrous for countries with low transparency, with weak corrupt judicial systems, with compromised police forces, and so on, when the corruption virus, if you like, enters their system. In my opinion, corruption breeds corruption. If people think their politicians are corrupt and are skimming money, they will indeed think, well, that's the way they behave, that's the way everyone should behave. For example, South Africa, there's so much hope there, and yet corruption has become rampant in their ruling party because of the suspicion, and only suspicion, that Western arms companies and others have bought politicians. But you only need the suspicion, and it grows like topsy.